Hi, everybody. Welcome to English 11. I am Miss Wellman. I am being joined by a special friend today. This is Vivian. She's my daughter. She um, got up out of her nap in the middle of me trying to record this. So we're just going to have her hang out with us as we go through this today. So I apologize, but she should be pretty good. She's just snuggling and playing. But anyway, today we're going to be talking about the 5-paragraph essay. And we're talking about this because your portfolio that is coming up and that we um, talked about in lesson 8 is an essay. And so I want to make sure that we cover the structure of a 5-paragraph essay. We will also cover the structure of a 3-paragraph essay for folks that have the modified assignment because of their instructional accommodations. So we'll cover both of those today. So it's a one-stop shop for everybody who's writing an essay for class, which is everybody in class. But before we hop into it too much, quick reminder that today you need to read chapters 14, I believe. Yes, I'm sorry. Chapters 14 and 15 for class today. It'll take about 38 minutes to get through that. So maybe just plan on 40 minutes just as you need to take pauses or whatever you need to do. But about 40 minutes to get through those 2 chapters today. And then after the lesson, there is a quick check that will have questions about those chapters. So make sure that you guys get that read. And we're going to start. So our learning outcomes for the day are we want to be able to identify and replicate all the parts of a 5-paragraph essay. The same goes for the 3-paragraph essay, being able to identify and replicate all of those pieces. I want you guys to be able to understand what a thesis statement is and how to write one. And then understand what a topic sentence is and understand how to write one of those as well. So, that being said, here is the outline of a 5-paragraph essay. And so each should be about 5 to 7 sentences, a typical paragraph length. And technically, there are really only 3 parts to it. But the second part has 3 paragraphs. So you have your intro, which you state a hook, and you start with a hook, and then you state your thesis. And you also will say what your 3 main points are. And then after that, you have your first paragraph. So your first paragraph will have a topic sentence that summarizes your first main point. And then you will have evidence that supports that main point. And you'll repeat that step for paragraphs 2 and 3, but you'll just use main point 2 and main point 3 for those topic sentences for those paragraphs. And then you will have evidence that supports those main topics or main points in those paragraphs. And then finally, you have your conclusion, which summarizes the main points, and then you restate your thesis and connect it to the rest of your essay. So if you think about it visually, and if you're kind of like a numbers person, the introduction is about 10% of your paper. The body is 80, so that's the biggest part of your essay. And then your conclusion is that last piece, that last 10% to get the full parts of your essay. So introduction goes from general to specific. So it goes from very broad to very narrow. So you have start off with your hook, which is generally broad, and then you narrow it further by talking about your thesis. And then it goes very narrow to the point when bringing up your main points. And then your body paragraphs there are 3 of them for the 5-paragraph essay. There's 1 of them for the 3-paragraph essay. And in that, you will state your main points in each one. So main point 1, main point 2, main point 3, and then you'll have evidence behind each of those. So evidence 1, evidence 2, evidence 3, tying with those main points. And that is a brunt of what your body paragraphs look like. And then finally, your conclusion goes from specific to general. So it's the opposite of your opposite structure-wise of your introduction with the same information in it. So you go from specific, so you restate your main points then go to your thesis, and then kind of talk about the topic in a more broad sense and how it ties into um, other parts of life or something larger than just the topic of, in our instance, Frankenstein. So up first is our introduction. So introductions have a hook. So that is something that will capture your attention. It can be an interesting question. It can be a strong statement, a fact or a statistic, a metaphor or a simile, um, an anecdote like a personal story, a description of something, or a quote. And we'll talk about more on one of the next slides coming up. And then you have your thesis, which that states the purpose of your essay and it says what you're trying to prove. You won't say for your thesis, like in this essay, I will, or I am trying to prove, things like that. We don't want you to write in first person when it comes to this essay, just because first person in writing is more so for like telling a story, like a narrative, or things along those lines. For a paper like this, you want in third person, just because that's the more academic type tone. So keep that in mind as you write that thesis statement. And then you will have your three main points also in your intro. So they all support the thesis and they will all serve as topic sentences for the coming body part of the essay or the paragraphs that follow after the intro but come before the conclusion. All right, so your hooks, there are, again, lots of types of them. There are about like 7 main types that folks use. And we'll get into those a little bit. But the first one that you can use is interesting question. So ask a question that relates to your essay or paper, and then make sure it's a question where the audience needs to read the essay to get the answer for the question that you asked. It can be a strong statement or a hook. So, or a strong statement as a hook, sorry. So you write a sentence or a group of sentences that make an assertive claim about your essay topic, and then make sure that this connects to your thesis statement. And the overall, again, just um, the overall topic of your essay. And then you could also do a fact or a statistic where you start your essay with a fact and try to tie it into what your thesis is, what the paper is about. You probably, this is probably like one of the least likely ones that you'll use for this, just because you're not trying to like really argue a certain topic. You're just trying to talk about what a symbol means in a book. So there aren't really like a lot of facts for that. So I don't anticipate that being a popular one to use. If you find a way to do it, that's really cool. But I don't think that would be like one of the best fitting hooks to use for this type of essay. You can use a metaphor or a simile. So write a metaphor that compares your topic to something else. Or do the same with a simile. So simile, write a comparison of your topic to something else using like whereas. You can do that as a hook. You can do a story for a hook. So you can do a quick little story at the beginning of your paper, like in a sentence or two that ties to your topic. Same with the description. You can give a really vivid description of something and then tie that into what your thesis is. Or the most popular one, and what I tend to do a lot for my papers, I usually, like when I was in school, I usually did a lot of quotes or stories for my hooks, just because that was kind of my more of like a wheelhouse of what I felt comfortable doing. But you can use any of these again, but quotes are probably like one of the easiest ones to do, where you pick a quote from either like another story, you pick a quote from a famous person, whatever else, and then you use that to kind of introduce your thesis and what you're talking about today in your story, or not your story, I'm sorry, in your paper. And now we have our, sorry, my daughter is playing with me. I'm trying to make sure she's not hurting herself. So then we have your thesis statement. So your thesis statement should explain in some detail what you expect to write about. It should be narrow and not super broad. You're trying to, again, narrow in a little bit more. The broad part was the quote, and I'm trying to narrow in a little bit with your thesis. And then it should it's easier to fully support a thesis that is narrow rather than too broad, and then make sure that it is specific rather than too vague or general. So it's easier to support something that is not like too broad. If something is a little more specific, then it's easier to pick specific pieces of evidence to support it. And then next we have our main points. So there are 3 main points of your essay. They're supposed to support your thesis. You will have 3 of them, obviously. There should be 1 per paragraph of your body part of the essay. And then we want to talk about TEECL, which means topic, sentence, explanation, evidence, comment, link, which we're going to get to this actually in the body paragraph, because this is these main points are what your paragraphs are about. And so when we get to the body paragraphs, we're talking about what TEECL means, what it looks like. It's coming up actually next. So our body paragraphs. Sorry about that. Okay. So again, TEECL is topic, sentence, explanation, evidence, comment, link. So topic sentence is your first sentence, and it tells the reader what the main idea or claim that you're making of the paragraph is. And then explanation needs to explain the claim in greater detail. And then evidence. You have evidence to support your claim. It can be research, like a journal or article or a website, or textual evidence from a novel, like what we'll do for this paper. And then all evidence requires appropriate citation. So make sure there's in-text citation included and a works cited page at the very end. So the in-text citation goes after your evidence, and then the works cited page is at the very end of the essay. All right. And then next we have comment. So you would explain how the evidence supports your claim, or how does it kind of prove your topic sentence. And then you will link. So it's going to also be like a transitional sentence, but summarize the main idea of the paragraph and then clarify how this paragraph supports your overall argument. So you're going to link this whole topic sentence, this main point, to how it is proving your thesis. This didn't end up linking in the slide, so I'm going to link it after I finish up this recording. But an example of this TEECL is, I got this from this website that I also have linked at the very end, but I'm going to read this to you and then explain that it's topic, sentence, explanation, things like that. So your topic sentence for this is: one of the main obstacles to reaching international consensus on climate change action is the ongoing debate over which countries should shoulder the burden. So that is the topic sentence that someone wrote in the simple paragraph. Explanation is: because the developed world has historically been responsible for the majority of greenhouse emissions, it has been argued that they should reduce emissions and allow developed nations to prioritize development over environment concerns. And then that explanation that someone used, they did cite it. You don't have to cite it in yours, but they did cite it in this paragraph. And then the next part is the evidence. So the notion of, quote, common but differentiated responsibility was formalized by the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. That is cited. Article 31 explicitly states, quote, according to the developed country, parties should take the lead in combating climate change and advertise the adverse effects thereof. And then that is at the end, that's your evidence. That's all kind of quoted from a couple different sites, actually, which is what they chose to do. You don't have to do it for, again, your guys' writing, but this is how this example paragraph is written. However, because CBDR outlines a principle and not an actionable plan, it has remained problematic. For example, it does not stipulate the extent to which the principle of CBR under developing nations should be exempt from specific emissions targets. This has continued to be a point of contention in global negotiations on climate change, with developed countries such as the USA arguing that developed nations should do more to reduce the emissions. And then it has that cited as well. So that's the comment on the evidence that was made. And then fairness and equity need to be pursued in reaching a global agreement on climate change, but transforming this into an actionable strategy is problematic. So then that is linking the evidence and the explanation and the comment back to the topic sentence, and also to the broad topic of climate change that is in this example essay. And again, I will link that picture when I finish recording this. So that's just a kind of one example of how this kind of looks in action as you're writing. And then you finally have your conclusion. So the conclusion, you need to restate the problem or restate your thesis. Sorry, your main points. So restate it for emphasis. Summarize the main points again. Finish by commenting on the significance of the issue your thesis addresses. So make a prediction about the future of the issue, or you can make a recommendation of how to deal with the issue. It's really up to you how you want to end it. In regards to your essay, since you're talking about what, again, light or fire means, your conclusion can, again, restate what it means, restate the theme it represents, things like that, and then maybe talk about it as like a larger topic. So if you're trying to argue, let's say that light is symbolic of discovery, you could argue that at the very end, like, discovery in science is important because it helps us advance society. But if we don't think about the repercussions of possible discoveries, we might be blinded by adverse outcomes or something like that. So again, your conclusion, you really want to just kind of make a more broad statement towards the end, kind of like your hook, but not quite, but similar. And then the 3-paragraph essay. So the 3-paragraph essay does all of these things, but it does it in a much more like condensed down version. So for your 3-paragraph essays, for those folks that have, again, those accommodations, you have introduction. So introduction is the same that you'd write for a 5-paragraph essay. So again, you talk about you've got your hook, your thesis statement, your main points. That is your introduction. Your body is just kind of all the paragraphs, but condensed down into one. And your body, you have your topic sentence, you have your evidence 1, and then you explain it. You have evidence 2, and you explain it. And then you link how those 2 pieces of evidence tie into what your thesis is. And then for your conclusion, the 3-paragraph essay is the same as the 5-paragraph essay, where you, again, restate your main points, restate your thesis, and then you you tie back your topic to something kind of broader, as like a broader topic, and like along those lines. But again, it follows the same structure for the conclusion and introduction that the 5-paragraph essay does. The only difference is that in a 3-paragraph essay, it's just shorter, and you just have 2 pieces of evidence and 2 explanations of the evidence in that body paragraph. And that is the gist to the end of that. Oh my goodness, excuse me. So then at the end of this, I have a helpful links page for you guys. So this I will go a little more in depth about those hooks I talked about earlier. This is some help with a 5-paragraph essay, like how the structure looks, things like that. This is the same, but for a 3-paragraph essay. Down here at the right-hand corner on the bottom is help with citations. This link is help with topic sentences And then this link is help with thesis statements. So I know that you guys have done a lot of writing already. I mean, you're juniors now, so you've done all of this before. This is just kind of if you want more help. These links are there to help you out should you want to use them. You don't have to at all. You're not going to be like tested on any of these things over here, but if as you are writing and you want help, this source is out there for you. So I just wanted to make sure that link page is there for you, but that is all that I have for today. If you have any questions with anything as you're coming up with writing and things like that, please reach out to us. We are more than happy to help you out. That is why we're your teachers and we're here for you. We might go a little bit more in depth about pieces of this in a live lesson, so kind of stay tuned for that coming up. But other than that, that is all I have for you guys today. Have a wonderful day. I hope that you guys are feeling good about this unit, feeling good about school. And just know that us teachers are here for you all the time and that we care about you guys. And thank you so much for listening along today. And we will catch you in the next lesson. Bye, guys.